Hello, welcome to yesterday's Airlines. It's time for another release ranking video as Phoenix have just sent out their March announcements. There's still some decent looking stuff in this set. It is a surprisingly large set from Phoenix. In fact, there are 19 models, which is a lot more than they usually produce. But as I say, at least half of those probably aren't really worth casting, just a waste of zinc, in my opinion. Nonetheless, we shall take a look at each of these models and see what I think. I'll try to keep the video reasonably short. It helps that I can lump quite a few of them together. So, before we get into the models, obviously subscribe to the channel, as always. Check me out at Instagram, @Airlines, and on Facebook at Airlines. And check out yesterdaysairlines.com, which has got a lot of material discussing the scale. Obviously, one of the things that I really want to do with Yesterday's Airlines is to inform and provide evidence to enable people to make better buying decisions and to understand the scale and how everything works in relation to 400 scale. So hopefully you find the resources that I produce do that, even if you still go out and buy Phoenix 747s. Never mind. Let's get over and take a look at this month's announcements from Phoenix. Okay, so we'll take this in the usual order, beginning with the Airbuses, then moving on to the Boeings, and finishing off with anything else. And we start with a model which is a model I think I suggested was likely to be made by Phoenix last month when I looked at the jcwings announcements, and that is a Qantas A330-200 wherein the pride is in the air colours VHEBL. jcwings announced this last month. It was reasonably inevitable that Phoenix would also announce the model as well. And of the two, I personally probably would prefer the Phoenix version of this release because I think that the Phoenix A330 is in general better than the jcwings version. Also, of course, Phoenix will get the model out in a sensible timescale. The only drawback with the Series 200 from Phoenix is obviously the horizontal stabilizers at the rear of the aircraft are way too large on the Series 200. And I don't know why Phoenix have not resolved this. They could quite easily just put on the Series 300 horizontal stabs, but at the end of the day, it's hard not to characterize Phoenix as just being a lazy company full of people who don't really care or understand. And the fact they haven't replaced those horizontal stabs is a bit of an indictment because it's such an easy change to make. But they haven't. It doesn't have an enormous impact on the look of the model, and overall the Phoenix A330 is pretty decent. So I'm still willing to put this one up into high flyer because I think that as an overall package, the Phoenix A330 does beat the jcwings version despite those horizontal stabs. And yeah, I think this will probably be quite nice. Also looking potentially quite nice is the next announcement. It is Air Senegal A330-900. So this is at least adding a bit of diversity to the 400 release sets. It's not often you see that many African carriers, especially the modern ones, ironically, in 400 scale. Air Senegal's got quite an attractive, if relatively, ordinary livery. Euro white, big titles, but it's got a colourful tail, and it's, interesting country, interesting airline, and the A330-900 is an attractive beast. The only things going against this, as I've probably said previously, is that again that the Phoenix A330-900 is a bit lazy. There's a theme here, hey. Phoenix are lazy. They are. So they've basically taken their A330 CEO, made it into a Neo by, adding new wings to it. That's good and bad. The undercarriage still could do with a little bit of tweaking off the CEO version. But worse really is just that the wings aren't spectacular and the new winglets are the wrong shape. So overall, I do prefer the jcwings version of this mold, but it doesn't seem that jcwings is interested in producing an Air Senegal. So I can completely understand that this would be a model that I would collect if it fit within my collection criteria. There's no real reason. The mold isn't so bad that I wouldn't buy it. I wouldn't recommend it over the jcwings version, but when you've only got the one option, in this case, I think it makes perfect sense to get this model. And again, I think I'll put this one up into High Flyer 2. So it's a good start for Phoenix. 2 high flyers, albeit both of them with the caveat that Phoenix is a bit lazy on the mold front. They could certainly have done better with the winglets on this Neo, and they certainly should fix the horizontal stabilizers on that Series 200. Next up, we've got a couple of Finnair A350s, and I think I was moaning not too long ago, probably in the last NG release, that how many Finnair A350s are there to produce, because there had been already 13. But apparently, there's an infinite number. I just didn't realise Finnair had so many special schemes on their A350. So here we've got a couple of aircraft, one OHLWP, and that one's got this rather nice Moomin scheme. Obviously, Moomins are from Finland, and they've appeared on quite a lot of Finnair aircraft historically. Hard to hate the Moomins, really. And it spices up a really boring Finnair livery. The other one wears a different special scheme. It's bringing us together since 1923 scheme, so some form of anniversary, I guess, and that's OHLWR. Really, they're both just adding a little bit of paint at the rear of the aircraft where the enormous Finnair titles don't take up space. They're not especially exciting. It wouldn't surprise me at all to see both of these models produced by NG in the near future, or even JC possibly. I have to say that the A350 from Phoenix is a distinctly middling mould. It's really not. I'm being nice. It's the worst A350 that's available at the moment. It's not dreadful. I do own a few, but it is certainly inferior to everyone else's. So yeah, it's hard for me to do a good ranking for these, or a really high scoring ranking for A350s. I don't like Finnair's livery, especially anyway, and there's already been quite a lot of releases, so these are almost re-releases. But I think these are just going to be workhorses in my world. It's an ordinary mold. It's a blah blah scheme really, and even these special scheme variants don't really liven up that much unless you're a big fan of the Moomins. So they're workhorse. So next up, we've got 4 models we can lump together. We've got a quartet of Star Alliance Airbus A380s. Now, last month, Finnair looked like they produced, I can't remember, but I'm looking at the list, so I assume I talked about it at the time, an all-Nippon Star Alliance A380, which is a fantasy livery. And these 4 Star Alliance A380s are also fantasy schemes. They're in the colours of Asiana, Thai, Lufthansa, and Singapore. And the Singapore one, at least, has the pretense of changing the Star Alliance look the way that Singapore do. Why do these models exist is a good question. I'm not really sure. I don't really have an enormous problem with fantasy models. There's definitely a place for them. Personally, I prefer fantasy models that actually could have existed, like a Pan Am Concorde in the right Pan Am scheme. I mean, not Billboard Concorde, that's stupid. That kind of thing. But, and I guess these could have existed. They could have Star Alliance versions of the scheme, so yeah, it's okay, maybe. But they don't exist. And do we need 5 in 2 months? Who's rebuying these? Maybe, I guess, if you're a Lufthansa collector, you might want a Star Alliance A380. I don't know. They're not exciting me anyway. I mean, Star Alliance isn't a very interesting scheme anyway, to be honest. But maybe they will sell. Maybe there's a lot of people who collect Star Alliance schemes out there. I'm not one of those people. I'm going to put these... I think I'm going to put these down into Gas Guzzler, which is perhaps harsh. Perhaps these should be sitting in the workhorse area. But 4 this month? No, I'm going to put them in the Gas Guzzler. That may be harsh, and you might disagree, but that is where I'm putting them. Sorry, Phoenix. Your mold's okay. I guess there's an idea here, but it's, yeah, that's just, meh. Why do that? I don't really understand, but yeah, maybe some people are really crying out for those. Who knows? Okay, that's the end of the Airbuses. So inevitably, we are on to the Boeings, and this month has a quite shocking number of 747s. It has 747s. There's a variety of really sought after liveries here: Air India, JAL, BA Landors, plus at Calita, which I don't think anyone cares about. But obviously, the Phoenix 747 is an atrocious mould. And there's been a lot of discussion in recent weeks and just the last couple of days. And to be honest, I don't write generally about models that I don't like that much because it's not interesting. And I don't really like to be mean. I know it might sound like sometimes I do, but I don't really like to be mean about people's models. But in this case, it's really hard not to be. And if you follow what I do, then you'll see that I've literally just written a piece about Phoenix 747s because I'm kind of sick of having the conversation. And I just want something that I can just push people off to and say, look, this is my opinion on these. They're dreadful. Please don't buy them. I know that no one's really listening to me. And I know that these schemes are sought after. And I know that lots of people will buy them. Even people that think the mould is atrocious. And, I understand the reasonings why people are doing that. They've been spelled out by others. There's little alternatives, basically, is the primary reason. But these molds, in my eyes, are just so bad that they can't be bought. And I am concerned that every time Phoenix sells one of these things, that it does lessen the chance of there being 747s from others. And I know that it's not Phoenix's fault that no one else has made a 747, but it is Phoenix's fault that their 747s are so bad. This mold has been around for a long time now, and they've never done anything to change it. Because, as we saw with the A330, the wing on the A321, and a whole range of other Phoenix molds, Phoenix are lazy and don't actually care. So, yeah. I'm not saying that, you're a fool if you buy these. I'm not saying that. I can completely understand the reasoning why people might go and purchase these, especially the Landors. I know that BA is obviously a big collection field for a lot of people, and people love the Landor scheme. But they're going to be, pretty poor models. And at the end of the day, they're way below the level that I buy. And you might think I'm a zealot, but that's not true. My collection is full of models from molds that I don't particularly like. But there's a line which even I don't cross, and these Phoenix 747s are way below that line for me. So, as I say, I'm sure they'll sell. The liveries are very well sought after, but they shouldn't. And personally, I would like people to stop buying Phoenix 747s because I do have concerns that it means that we're never going to see real 747s from anyone else. Hey, that's my opinion. That's my view. Feel free to disagree with it. But I think these are scrap metal. They are just bad molds, to be honest. Really bad. And check out the review that I've done over at my website, Yesterday's Airlines. And I try and explain why I consider these to be bad. I am not just making some highly charged emotional statement on these. I'm actually looking at the models and I can see the problems. And to be honest, even from several feet away, you can see the problems. And people who say they can't really, I've got to question why they're collecting model airplanes at all. But yeah, have a look, see what you think. It's your decision. But for me, they're scrap now. And that leaves us with 4 other models to discuss. And things improve from here on, I think, a little bit. So the first one up is a Lufthansa Cargo 777 freighter. It's DALFK. It's wearing, I don't know if you can call it a special scheme, but Kühne Nagel seem to be getting everywhere nowadays. And it's got those titles on the rear, along with some other text as well. I don't sound especially excited about it, and I'm not really, because it's a Lufthansa Cargo 777 freighter. But I did see pictures of the previous Phoenix Lufthansa Cargo 777 freighter, which was the one with pretty much a completely blank aeroplane. And to be honest, it looks good because the Phoenix 777 is fundamentally a decent mould, which competes quite nicely with the NG mould. In fact, looking at the pictures, the Phoenix one looked a bit better than the NG one, but from the images that I am seeing. It's not a perfect mold by any means, and I personally I think the JC one is better, but it's a perfectly good mold and one of the Phoenixmodels which is still highly competitive, I would say, in the scale. But the scheme itself, yeah, isn't particularly exciting. But I would imagine that there's a lot of people collecting Lufthansa, maybe not quite as many collecting Lufthansa cargo. I don't really see any reason not to put this into high flyer. It doesn't excite me, but I imagine quite a lot of people will like it, and it's got a good mold. So yeah, happy to high fly this one. The last Boeing of this month's set is a Taiwanese airline. It is EVA Air, and if that sounds familiar, that's because NG just announced some EVA Air 787s as well, and jcwings announced this exact aeroplane the month before too. It's a Star Alliance scheme, B17812, but this Star Alliance scheme actually exists, though I'm not sure the aircraft has been delivered yet. Yeah, the Phoenix 787 is another tired mould, really, that isn't up to the competition, but it's not appallingly bad. It's not good. It's a very old mould. It dates from, I think, 2005, 2006, something like that, but it's not shocking, but it's certainly nowhere near as good as the NG or the jcwings versions. So yeah, I don't know. I'd probably wait for the jcwings one myself, though it might be some wait. It wouldn't surprise me at all if NG also produce this model soon. I'd take the chance myself and wait if I was interested in it, which I'm not. But hey, again, as always, up to you. But for me, this one's sitting in workhorse. It's a mediocre mold. It's not a very exciting scheme or particularly exciting airline. I think somebody else is going to make it better, personally. And that leaves two aircraft this month, the non-Boeing and Airbus components of the release set. Increasingly, it's not often you get to say that anymore. The first one up is a classic, I guess it counts as nowadays. It's an American Airlines MD-11, and Phoenix have been producing quite a few MD-11s recently, which is, I guess, broadly positive. I say, I guess, broadly positive because I'm not sold on the changes they've made to the mould. Phoenix have this tendency to add long undercarriage with oversized tyres, and that's what they've done to the MD-11 too. It's an old mould. It's got a variety of detail complaints that you could make. It's incredible that the first American Airlines MD-11 release in the scale was from the year 2000 by Gemini, and it actually uses this exact same mould, just with the rear seam removed. But what Phoenix have done is they've come in, they've added their own gear to it, and obviously it's got aerials too. Do they make it fundamentally better? Yeah, I could argue that they don't really. I can't say that there's major issues with the old mould, even though it had non-rolling gear, but I don't get excited by rolling gear, especially not from Phoenix. But I think, again, that there is demand here. I think that Phoenix, at the very least, are quite good at the moment at finding models that a lot of people will want to buy. It's just a shame that their moulds aren't slightly better here. It would be nice to see a new MD-11 mould rather than just reheating this old one. And I have to say that if you're going to reheat an MD-11, then the jcwings version, which uses the same base mould, is a better version of that. Their undercarriage improvements are superior to the Phoenix ones. But at the same time, I've seen pictures of the FedEx MD-11 recently put out. It looks fine, as long as you don't mind the gear. It's not so bad that I wouldn't purchase it, probably, but I'd probably give it a second thought, maybe. I don't know. I think this one, again, will sell. I think a lot of people will like it. It probably look reasonable, but for me, the undercarriage is a problem, but I can understand why it isn't for others. So, again, I think I'll put this one up in the high flyer. The mould definitely needs some work, but it's a sort of material I think that a lot of people will be after, and it'll probably turn out to be an okay model. And we end this month's look at the Phoenix announcements with a Tupolev 154B P552, and this is Air Koryu, obviously. It's wearing the updated scheme with the thin cheat line under the windows. Doesn't look as nice actually as the old scheme, I have to say, but good to see 154. It's a shame it's Air Koryu though. I know a good friend of mine requested this from Phoenix, and it's part of the reason they made it, but yeah, just North Korea. North Korea, what can you say? Possibly the worst place in the world, literally, with some of the most horrible leadership. So it's hard to get too excited about Air Koryu releases, even though I admit I have got 4 in my collection. So that's not a reason not to get it. Moving on from that, the Phoenix T154 is nice. It's obviously an update of an old mould again, but this one they've actually done quite nicely. You don't see enough usage on the mould. I'd always be looking or be happy to see more Phoenix T154s, I have to say. Perfectly good mould. It's okay. Obviously, it's not up to the NG standard of their new 154, which they don't use. So, yeah, it'll probably be perfectly good. Probably be a nice model. I don't think the mould is up to standard where I can supersonic this. But again, I'm happy to put this up into high flyer, to be honest. So, yeah, that's a decent way to end. So 19 models, and you may have thought coming into this video that I was just going to shit all over them and dump them all down into scrap metal and gas guzzler. And I try to be fair with these. I try to be objective. I try to look at the evidence, and you know, looking across this release set, aside ignoring the 747s, it's a fairly standard Phoenix bunch with a fairly standard set of Phoenix molds being used, most of which, you know, are bang average for 2023. So the A350s, the 787s, the 154, the MD-11, even the A330s, you know, they're bang average molds for this year. You'd say the A380 is probably above average, but and the 777 probably too. But the rest of them are kind of, they're okay. They're not bad. They're not great. They're just kind of are there. And Phoenix haven't updated them meaningfully in a long time. And even when it does, it doesn't really know how to do it properly. When it comes to 747s, obviously they're a category aside. I've said my piece about those. You know, Phoenix are obviously trying to please an audience. And, yeah, good on them for that. But they'd be pleasing a much bigger chunk of the audience, I think, if they could rework some of the deficiencies with some of these molds. I mean, when it comes to 747s, it's hard to rework that mold. But, yeah, different story. Anyway, that's it for this month. I'm not a big Phoenix fan, obviously, but mainly because they just don't make great models. And yesterday's Airlines is all about quality models. Obviously, it seems like a lot of people aren't about quality models, and that's entirely your choice. But I can't sit here and say that a model that is actually bad, you know, demonstrably bad, is good. That would be wrong. And you've got to say those 747s are demonstrably bad models. So, yeah, I have to give them bad scores. That's the way it is. The rest of the release set is okay. But you'll notice there's no supersonics this month. And that really illustrates, I guess, that Phoenix's mold catalogue is a bit blur. And they don't make a great deal of really interesting stuff. The Air Senegal, if that had been on the JC mold, I'd have probably given that a supersonic. But on the Phoenix mold, probably not quite so much. So it was close, but not there. But anyway, that's it for this month. Thanks very much for listening, guys. Hope you enjoy the videos and the site, and plenty more content coming up in the coming weeks. See you later.